So the devil says, adversity relieves people of vanity and egotism. How?
Boom. I got one right now.
Get it.
I was feeling real on top of my game with jiu-jitsu because I had like a good couple days. And then in today's class, I rolled with somebody far superior than me. And it was exactly what I needed. Like, talk about ego and all that stuff, you know? It was like, you really are right here, you know? But like that challenge is what helped reassess me and like reevaluate where I need to be, how much more I need to do, like what are my realistic goals, you know? So, you know, and that's just one thing, you know?
Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Paradyme Podcast. We hope you're having a good week. Thank you so much for tuning in. We really hope you enjoy the show. So before we jump into it, we want to urge you to subscribe to the channel, hit that little bell. We have a Spotify. We have Apple Podcasts now. We're on all the podcasting
platforms,
whatever you got. We are on there. So go ahead and find us. It's just going to be Paradyme. And if you don't want to just type it in, look down in the description below. Everything you need will be in there. So follow us on our social media platforms, like the video, comment down below. How are you liking the book? We'd love to hear from you. So just like every episode, we're going to start with a little bit of a disclaimer. We here at Paradyme do not claim to have all the answers. We simply desire to be better each day. We make videos in the hope that other people that desire the same can use some of the tools we've discovered along our journey. So the information for this discussion this week comes from the book Outwitting the Devil by Napoleon Hill. And the chapter we are discussing in this week's episode is titled Learning from Adversity. So the first question I'll extend to you guys is, were there any main takeaways you took from the chapter?
My biggest takeaway was where it is mentioned that failure is a state of mind. Therefore, it is something an individual can control until he neglects to exercise this privilege. Yeah, I really like the idea that failure is a state of mind, you know? What do you guys think? I mean, do you guys agree that it is a state of mind?
Absolutely.
Because I think when people hear that, they're like, no, like, what do you mean? Like, I actually failed. I failed this test. I didn't pass this thing, right? Mm-hmm. And then that's, you know, we'll get into it, but that's like the end all right then and there for some people. But it all starts in your head, right? Or your outlook.
Wrong.
Absolutely.
All wrong. I think
Go ahead.
I think that there is failure, but there's a difference between what can be temporary failure and then, you know, succeeding later, or permanent failure and leaving it at that. So big thing he talks about is like a big failure can disrupt your hypnotic rhythm, you know, because one, it can be so earth shattering that you just fucking start something new. But the big thing is that, yeah, failure is real, I think. But there's a difference between it can be a temporary failure for success later, or it's permanent failure and you're left at that and you never learn from it.
Absolutely. I would agree with both of you guys. The way I would differentiate failure from like defeat is failure is only, I guess, temporary versus permanent is you quitting. Once you realize like you're moving on to the next thing because you're quitting the next thing or the previous thing, that's when you failed, because you're not trying to accomplish any more steps to succeed in that previous acquisition of whatever you're trying, and you're moving on to something else. So you're acknowledging that, hey, I failed in that, so I'm gonna move on to something else. I think it's actually a benefit to us that we fail, and we fail often, because that's how we learn a lot of valuable lessons with adversity. I think that's why we see stories about like people that are handed stuff that become really resentful to the world because they feel regretful or they feel like guilty in a way. But yeah, I agree with both of you guys. That's how I would define failure versus quitting. I think once you quit, that's what defines whether you're going to actually move on from that previous thing that you did and you're not doing it no more. And it's like you failed because you stopped it and you're not going to try and pursue it anymore.
Yeah, I think I do agree with that. It's a state of mind because one, he says it on page 255 in my book, that failure is a man-made circumstance. it is never real until it has been accepted by man as permanent. So failure is a state of mind, and therefore it is something an individual can control. So I do like that because, we've heard Thomas Edison has failed 10,000 times before he succeeded. And when you would ask him, hey, you failed 10,000 times. How does that feel? He would say, I didn't fail 10,000 times. I just figured out 10,000 ways that didn't work.
To do it, yeah.
Right. And so it's a mind state of this is temporary. So how do I become better for next time?
For sure. You can fail a test, but you're not a failure yet.
Yeah.
Right. Until you decide you are.
Yeah. And I mean, you can take that test again the next semester.
Exactly.
Right.
That's the point I was trying to get across.
Yeah.
Right.
But John's point, like when people fail, sometimes it's like a clismic, like life-changing, altering thing, like where you don't want to do it anymore because it's like, fuck, this shit sucks. Like I don't like failing. You know what I mean? Like it's a smack in the face. So
yeah. We'll talk about our learning from adversity personal experiences later, because I have something that actually sparked something in me that it made me just remember something. So we'll talk about that in a bit.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
Anybody else have some major takeaways? Go ahead, John. I know you were going to say. No?
No.
Okay. So were there any exchanges between Hill and the devil that really stood out to you in this chapter?
Oh, I just had it. Damn it. Should have stayed on it.
I like this part where Hill is saying, and I'll quote, I am beginning to see the law of hypnotic rhythm is capable of both negative and positive application. It may drag one down to slavery through loss of the privilege of freedom of thought, or it may help one rise to great heights of achievement through the free use of thought, depending on how the individual relates himself to that law. Is that correct? And then the devil says, now you have it right. I just thought that was an interesting, like, that was like that's one of the very few lines where the devil's like, yeah, you're correct. So
that's true.
Hypnotic rhythm is capable of both negative and positive application.
Yeah, I feel like the devil's demeanor in this whole chapter was a little bit different. He wanted to make sure Hill understood where he was coming from before they moved forward. And it wasn't ever like that in any other chapter, right? He was just trying to like skirt the idea, or like kind of like a politician, just completely answer a different question. And so it was interesting in this chapter for him to be like, all right, let me make sure you understand this before we move forward. And so I was like, is he telling the truth?
Yeah.
I thought that was an interesting demeanor change.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I have two parts. I kind of want to stick to one now. I think we'll discuss it. Maybe like one of us will bring it up later. But I think a key takeaway of dialogue that the devil and Napoleon Hill have is when he asks the devil, how can improper relationships be corrected? And later, like he says quite a bit of stuff, but it's in the middle of his the devil speaking, and he says, when you speak of business leaders who succeed because they know how to pick men, you might more correctly say they succeed because they know how to associate minds which harmonize naturally.
Yeah.
Knowing how to pick people successfully for any definitive purpose in life is based upon ability to recognize the types of people whose minds naturally harmonize. And I think that comes off a little like, okay, what are you saying? Like harmonizing people and are you saying like, you know how to read people? Like, what are you actually saying? And what I picked up on it, what he was actually trying to, I guess, come to the read, like get the audience to understand is you have this superstition of like being able to read people. Up until when you're born, up until however old you are right now, you build a certain like way of thinking about the world, the way you see the world, and you develop friends based around what you like, what you don't like, right? And you kind of stay away from people that don't really align with what you do in life, how you think, where you work. And I think when he says harmonizing, you're trying to find a cohesion between, or I guess a balance between how does the world differentiate from me and how can I collaborate with people that think like me? And you're always in between this balancing. And I think that's why he uses the word harmonizing, because it's always like a teeter-totter, like you're always trying to balance, but you want to find the people that like, not find people, but you want to associate with people that kind of align with your ideals or your beliefs, and not everybody that's great is going to think like how you do. You just have to be able to see through it. And it feels sort of superstition to me.
I would say another way to think about that is like, you not align with people that think like you, but you know how to like maintain the relationship with people who don't think like you, right?
Yeah.
That's like the harmonious relationship that's established.
It makes me think of the video Principles by Ray Dalio.
Yeah.
Or Dalio.
Yeah.
And I got him confused with Chris D'Elia. So Ray Dalio, he has this video called Principles. It's like a short movie that they broke into episodes. And in one of them, he talks about surrounding himself with people that are smarter than him. Okay. And it's like, it has like a line of people, and above them is a thought bubble. And some are circles, some are squares, some are triangles, and all these different type of polygons. And he assembles all the different types of polygons, and they all think from a different perspective. And because of that, they can assess a problem thoroughly.
Yeah,
right?
It's coming from all different types of perspectives.
Right. And so to be able to gather all those people and get them to mesh well and find like, oh yeah, the circle and the oval go really well together. Or, great businessmen can see, okay, this mentality and this mentality go well together. Mm-hmm. And in Jordan Peterson's first 12 rules, an antidote to chaos, he talks about two workers. If you guys remember this, one has a neurodegenerative mind trait, mind ailment, and another person got injured with a pole through his head. And they put them both together, and they both complemented each other. Do you guys remember this?
What book was that?
That was 12 Rules for Life and Antidote to Chaos. And so they put them together, and because where one's weaknesses were, one's strength were, and vice versa. And so they put them together, and because they were together, they produced more.
Yeah.
Nice.
And so that made me think of that. So a good businessman can be like, oh, this person and this person will go well together. Let's put them together and see what they can achieve.
Yeah. I agree with that. So that was my takeaway. You know what I mean? I'd love to hear yours and John's.
Yeah. So on page 264 in my book, Hill asks, or he says, if there are possible benefits to be found through adversity, name some of them. And the devil says he says a couple different things, and I want to ask you guys how or why. So the devil says adversity relieves people of vanity and egotism. How?
Boom. I got one right now. I was feeling real on top of my game with jiu-jitsu because I had like a good couple days. And then in today's class, I rolled with somebody far superior than me. And it was exactly what I needed. Like talk about ego and all that stuff, It was like, you really are right here, But like that challenge is what helped reassess me and like reevaluate where I need to be, how much more I need to do, like what are my realistic goals, So, and that's just one thing, You
walk in with a big chest, you're like,
yeah, and then I get my ass beat, So I need that,
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah, I think that's the closest like example you can get to like why egotism and vanity like can actually become harmful to you. Because if you don't have things like that, like what John just explained, then it's like hard to like identify where you actually stand. If you say like if John walked in the building was like beating everybody, you know what I mean? Like who's actually better than him? Who's actually going to like show him, hey, you still need all this stuff to work on.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think sport tournaments are great for that. Like, hey, I'm going to state for this. You know what I mean? You figure out that you were just a big fish in a small pond. And when you go to the big pond, you figure out that there's some big fish in there that are a little bigger than you. Yeah. So, I think that was a good one. Another one he says here is adversity forces an individual to test his mental, physical, and spiritual strength.
Yep.
How?
I mean, for me, it always comes back to physical. But I mean, here's one we could all share. Mount Whitney was like a 4.5 time period of, moments of adversity, whether it was stuck in a storm or you're popping a tire, you're getting blisters on your foot or whatever, there's a lot of different moments of adversity. And like, you really put to the test of like, how strong are you mentally? How strong are you physically? Like, can you overcome fear? Can you overcome the group's fear? Can you help lead? Can you execute and see this through, or are you going to be scared? And after the fact, you just prove to yourself where you really stand.
Yeah, that trip was really amazing for that, right? Because everybody stepped up at different times. and
Yeah.
everybody fulfilled a different strength and need of the group.
Yes.
Like,
Yeah, that
David
was
had a
good.
Snickers.
Yeah.
You know?
Yes. And I mean, I will say, you know, we all volunteered for that. So it's easier for us to have a positive outlook on that. Typically it's harder when you don't volunteer for adversity, but but that's when you really got to turn up the heat and be like, nah, this shit's mine, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think a basic example is like since John just said it, like when you voluntarily like put yourself in a situation. I think like going to any sort of gym, like the climbing gym for you, like working out, strength training, depending on what time you go, like that's a disciplined schedule, and you're putting yourself up against a physical, I guess, self-control. Like nobody ever. Sometimes we don't want to go. You know what I mean? Like, but kind of like if you told yourself you're going to do something, you're kind of letting yourself down if you don't do it.
Yeah.
And I think that plays a huge role in building the mental strength and the
I think that's more in line with discipline.
Yeah, it's more of a line of discipline, but I think because it says adversity forces an individual to test his mental, physical, and spiritual. I think adversity is like someone that's maybe trying to lose a lot of weight. You know what I mean? That's like a real adversity for a lot of people, but they don't know how to build up the discipline to get to that point. And so that adversity and physical is kind of hard for them.
Yeah. I like this part, not to butt in, but there's this part where on page 214, he starts giving like a list of what adversity does. Like it forces an individual to do this and this and this. The last one is adversity breaks old habits of thought and gives one an opportunity to form new habits. Therefore, it may serve to break the hold of a hypnotic rhythm and change its operation from negative to positive. And so that's what made me think about, what you just said. People have already a habit or a hypnotic rhythm of not going to the gym. So they're volunteering once they reach that point. I got to get this, right? Yeah. And so they're breaking their old habits and forming new ones. So it's interesting.
Yeah. So another one the devil states is adversity forces one to seek ways and means to definite ends by meditation and introspective thought. Ooh. I thought this one was really powerful. So I'll ask how again, and I'll lay that on the floor and let you guys kind of talk about it, bring it up.
I think just going back to the Whitney example, I remember John and I were in the tent after the day that we almost got electrocuted. And we went through the hailstorm, and I remember sitting down, laying there being like, why did I do this to myself? Like my body was in complete shock. Right. Mm-hmm. And I think I did enter like a really deep, 30 minutes of like introspective thought. Like, why did I do this? Like, what do I want? Like, what am I proving to myself? And then, I think it gets you answers that are already within yourself. You just get to the core of it because you've gone through something like crazy amount of adversity, right? It's what the definition of adversity is. It's like difficulties.
Deeper sense of like why you do things, why you take actions. And I think when he says meditation, like that, for one, I practice meditation and just like stillness. Being able to sit alone with your own thoughts for like a short period of time is a very helpful practice for me, and I think that's why I took it on. And I think meditation for a lot of people can really help. But I think that's what he's saying is like it's a deeper sense of like why you're doing the things you do, and you need to be able to be alone for a little bit to find that out. And
there's something to be learned there, in those moments where things are really hard for you, and you don't like the thoughts, and it's really depressive. Like I won't lie, like recently, like I was going through a pretty depressive episode, and it was pretty bad, man. Like I was going through it, but it was constantly, I think what we've learned and even like this chapter was teaching me that there's something to be learned, and there's a lot of benefits from adversity. And, you can get to that and discover that within yourself if you're able to kind of, like be still in the moment and pay attention to those thoughts. So, kind
of coming back to what we had said that, John brought it up in the chapter. It mentions how adversity, failure break hypnotic rhythm. And if you don't take the time, let's say you're in a whirlpool, if it stops and you don't take the time to process, meditate and take some time for introspective thought, the hypnotic rhythm is going to pick right back up again. So you have to be able to think of how to swim out. Yeah. Right. So I thought that one was really good too. So there's a couple more. I'll do one more. So
I think David went over the last one, breaking old habits and thought.
So he states, adversity forces one to recognize the need for intelligence not available except from sources outside of one's own mind. So this one, let's say school, if we consider that for me, research and adversity, there'll come a point where you're like, man, I just don't know. You know what I mean? Like, I just don't know what the answer is. And so for research, you have to be like, okay, well, if I don't know, I better go find it. Right. So you have to go read, you have to go talk to people that might know. And so it really gives you a wake up call that like, hey, I got to learn more.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So
for me, that was one example in that case that it just really made sense to me.
Dude, this one part in the book, page 202, bouncing off that, there's this point where I believe the devil says, if they knew that every form of defeat and all failures bring with them the seed of unborn opportunity, they would keep on fighting and win. Success usually is but one short step beyond the point where one quits fighting. Right. So I'm thinking about you when you're at that point, or when anybody's at that breaking point. Let's say the term failure, right? You failed at something. It's actually that it plants that seed of unborn opportunity. So I think that's what I'm going to start to learn as I get older. And, as we continue doing things, is that whenever I fail at something, or I get my ass beat at maybe not jujitsu, but maybe like, design or, the gym and whatnot, it's just it's a seed of unborn opportunity. There's something being planted there and there's something to learn.
Yeah. And I think that's what she always references the book, that 3 feet from gold. 3 feet from gold, right? Like the person that stops or quits right before they hit the gold, and the person that like just continues going, like understands that opportunity is probably right, like another inch away. Yeah. Like, and that's what keeps them pushing. So that was a good, dope.
Or you need some new tools.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's something as simple as that.
Tight.
Yeah, man. We talk about processing a good amount of the episodes. Don't forget to do that.
Yeah. I kind of want to talk about this example because I think like a lot of our, at least our world is filled around, like kind of like associated with it a lot. And if you look around our nation, at least, and I guess the world, but it's the question from Napoleon Hill says, what benefits may be derived from the loss of material things, money, for example? And the devil says the loss of material things may teach many needed lessons, none greater, however, than the truth that man has control over nothing and has no assurance of the permanent use of anything except his own power of thought. I think that was so critical, like in what I'm trying to do and the vision I have, like say just for like us here with my trading, with building something, like ownership, the things I talk about is because like I could lose everything. I want to be able to like know that if I lose everything, I'll still be strong enough to like get up and like tie my bootstraps up and continue moving forward and figure out, okay, that shit's, it's all gone. It's all gone. I lost it all. Now where do I pick up from? Like, what do? I have all this information in my brain. I got to be able to use it somehow. Yeah. You know what I mean? And I think that was such a crucial, like,
that was a powerful exchange right there.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Especially if you read books like, say, The Psychology of Money. During like crashes and during these huge recession periods of people making a lot of money for like years on end and then losing it all during like a recessionary economy, they jump in front of trains and like jump off buildings and shit because it's like they tied their identity so close to the pursuant of like money and material possession. You know what I mean? It's kind of, it's sad, but at the same time, like I think we all want a great success in material things, but not to identify ourselves with it. It's kind of like the point where you can get lost, I think. But
yeah, I think JBP mentions in the first 12 Rules for Life that the guy that lost $1 billion in one day in Japan and then jumped in front of a train.
And those stories are very common if you look at history.
Yeah, it's interesting. And I was thinking about it on the way over here is like people's what defines your identity, and that's a subjective thing. It's like what your identity is completely up to you, right? If you were like, I'm a rich guy or I'm a smart guy or whatever it is, you decide that. So it's so interesting. Like when people tie it to money, how it can go really well or really bad, really quick. So yeah, I think that was a really good exchange. Any other ones?
I don't know. There's some pretty good ones in there that we said. Yeah.
Okay. Are you guys willing to share an experience in which you learned from adversity?
I feel like I'm always learning from adversity. Like, for example, like I just recently lost my 100K trading account, and I don't see it as a loss because I'm like, okay, well, I profited, I made money like using it, and I showed myself over time, like, bro, you've accomplished having a 100K trading account, and like a lot of people don't even get to that point. It's like, did you really lose? And where are you looking at this perspective that you lost? How did you get this perspective? And right, like, and I think the adversity of like having to do like demo trading and studying long hours and figuring out how am I developing my strategy to trade the foreign exchange market, like all of that stuff played into like adversity, like figuring out, damn, I got to fucking spend this amount of hours, like, and I'm going to be tired tomorrow and I'm going to have to miss a gym or do this over time. It's playing off, but like, hey, I still take a little like defeat here and there, but like over the long term of my life, long period of my life, like who's to say I'm not going to become the person that I want to become in the next year, next 2 years, next 10 years? Like, so to me, I'm playing the long game, and I think adversity is always going to benefit me, even though it's going to suck in the short term.
Yeah. If you had to boil it down to maybe one or two of the lessons you learned from that, what were they?
That you're going to fail for sure.
Okay.
If we could succeed, like if we could do anything to succeed, then everybody would do what you wanted to do, right? Like everybody would create a podcast. Everybody would want to day trade and make money out of the markets. Everybody would want a YouTube channel. Everybody would want, but if you look at the work it takes to develop something, that's where a lot of people are like, well, I'll just go get this job and kind of just make my money that way. And I think, well, we all got to do what we got to do. But I think the biggest lesson I learned is like, if you look at failure as a quitting, as a method to move on to something else, then you'll never succeed at anything.
Yeah. Extreme success.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. How about you guys?
You go ahead. You have anything?
Me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a couple. Before we had gotten to this question, it made me think of the first time I failed a college class. And I think everybody or most people have tried calculus. And my first time taking calculus, I failed at it. And, all because of myself. I wasn't a great student at the time, and I didn't value school the way I do now. So what happened was I had to take it again. And by taking it again, I had to kind of crush my pride and be like, you know what? Because before that, I was like, I don't fail classes. And then now that I had to take it again, I had to like rearrange how I do school. So I would go to class, I'd go skate and do BS between classes and then show up and just like be there. And then after that, I got to a teacher that was like, hey, we have these resources. If you go and exercise these resources, I'll give you extra credit. And so by going and actually doing that, I figured out how to exercise resources like, textbooks, like people who know. There's this place called the Math Center at Reedley College where I would go and you get extra credit point for every hour you went. And I think that whole semester I ended up spending like 500 to 600 hours in that place. And because of that, they recognized at the Math Center I wanted to be good at something. And I got hired to be a tutor for calculus because of that. And then after that, they hired me to be a supplemental instructor. And so like I was an extra instructor for calculus. I became a tutor for a whole bunch of different things. And I just kind of redeveloped who Jay was as a student and as a scholar. And because of that, I mean, dude, the change that came from that failure was astronomical. Like I wouldn't be here today if I didn't fail a calculus class. Right. And so I learned a lot because of that adversity. That's just one of the many. But
dude, if the story just stopped at you just being a calculus tutor, that would be like a fucking great story. you know, and like,
Yeah.
you know, and like the fact that it compounded so much more in your life is like really the big thing in that, you know?
Right. Yeah. Like I really had to remix and change who I was in order to be a good student and in order to be a good thinker. And it really did change my life's trajectory for real.
So,
and it was just one failure.
You brought up earlier about how like the whirlpool and then like trying to get out swimming during that time with failure. When I think about it, sure, like whirlpool, well, I think like a failure could be like a fucking nuclear bomb that like obliterates everything in sight. And you have a chance to start something new while there's nothing there. Or continue the same way you've been going and wait till everything just picks back up again, you know?
Yeah. So civilization rebuilds. Yeah. We shall rebuild.
You're still doing the same old thing.
Yeah, dude. And the next bomb comes.
Sure.
Yeah. How about you guys? You guys have anything you want to share?
Yeah. Quick story. So Devin and I were in a studio together at the pandemic. It was 2020. And I think a lot of good things were happening in that studio. You know, we were getting our creative grind on, you know, fresh out of college. And things were going smooth until, you know, went through a terrible breakup. And on top of that, you know, we lost the studio because the landlord was being fucking crazy. And she was just involved with some illegal stuff. And unfortunately, we took an L. I would say we failed at that, you know, in that moment. And out of that, I was like, man, well, I'm just going to freelance and do design no matter what, right? I'm going to just do this and I'm going to make it a part of my lifestyle. I'm going to quit this like medical job that I was on because it was terrible. And I'm going to make enough money as if I was working a part-time job just by taking my freelance graphic design skill up a little bit. And I was making enough money to like, you know, we went to Vegas, like I was able to kind of, I got a grant out of it for applying through an art and design, like a grant here in Fresno Arts Council. Shout out to Carlos. And that provided me like a buffer to keep going. And then, you know, there was times where I took a dip on the freelance game, but because I'd done so much work out of that and I built up the portfolio to kind of prove that I could do this by myself, I ended up having such a worthy portfolio to, you know, Bitwise, where I work now, that they hired me on to their marketing department. And it was all because even despite that, like, you know, we lost the studio, I kept the work going, even though it was hard. And because of how much work I'd put in there, I actually used the Fig Loop Studios brand guide as an example of what I could do. And they're like, oh, you know, that's good. So we'll offer you this. And because I have that, you know, I'm very thankful for my company, and it really changed my life for real. Like, we have a nice place now. It's connected me to a lot of people. And I think me as who I am has just changed, you know, exponentially as well. And that was definitely adversity for me. Yeah. That was terrible.
Yeah, it's like all your adversities build like this like layer of learning and lessons and growth. Yeah. But you're like, well, I want to be here, but you don't see all like the platform that you're building for yourself to get higher and higher and higher to get to the point.
Your story, dude.
It's crazy.
Even like John said, even me quitting that medical job and doing the freelance money, making, you know, just enough to get by, was the win out of all of that, you know. But then it actually kept going.
Nice snowball effect.
Yeah.
Adversity for real.
John, you got one you're willing to share other than Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu?
No, I couldn't really think of one like on the spot. So, and you guys said enough. So, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Definitely.
John,
all right, then I'll extend a question to you to answer first. Then, what piece of advice would you give to our listeners and viewers who are going through adversity right now?
Yeah, this is perfect, because I actually had a whole talk with this dude today about something very similar to this. Don't dodge it. Like, after your first failure, don't dodge adversity because it's easier. You know, what's the whole point then? You know, do you want to be a winner or do you want to be whatever you are right now? You know, and like a winner doesn't dodge adversity. If anything, they fucking Chris Kyle that bitch and fucking headshot that motherfucker. You know, they fucking take their time and like plan accordingly and like try it again. So just don't dodge it. When you see adversity coming your way, don't tuck your tail and run away, because like you won't go further on that road, you know?
Yeah.
That's a good point. Very good point.
Good one.
How about you guys? Anything else you want to add to that?
What would I teach someone?
Just one piece of advice.
Man, I would just tell whoever's listening or watching, take inventory of what you feel like you failed recently at, or, you know, maybe even feel like you are a failure, right? Come at it with that John mentality. Just own it. You know, you did fuck up or whatever, but be alone with your thoughts and maybe take account to like, this might be a seed of unborn opportunity. This might be, you know, I might be 3 feet away from gold. May not feel like it, you know, but you might be, this might be that part of your story where you do get further in life because you did persist and you related yourself well to the hypnotic rhythm of how you got to where you are. Now you can it could be the reset that John was talking about. The nuclear bomb came and just wiped out everything, right? You know, but what are you going to do with that clean slate?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Even I would just say like, I wouldn't refer to it as a clean slate, because I think that like, just acknowledge like, hey, I failed. But if you acknowledge that you never quit, I don't think you can go wrong. I think you're going to go so much farther. Like if you recognize like, I just never quit. I've done like Albert Einstein, like just never quit. Just kept doing it, going. You'll get so much further than if you just start over. You know what I mean? So
Yeah. Go ahead, John.
I want to say sometimes it is okay to quit. For example, I would tell a crackhead, it's okay to quit. It's okay to quit this. All right. So it all depends what, like, in context, what we're talking about, you know?
Yeah, context.
Like, okay, for example, your buddy could be dating a fucking awful, like the worst, right? And he's like, I'm trying to make it work. I'm trying to make it work. It'd be like, dude, fucking, it's okay to quit that. She sucks, you know? New curve. Start something
He's
new. You know?
Get out of the hypnotic rhythm.
That's funny, Chris. That's funny. I like that. That's funny. We should use that more.
We need to insert our own.
Nice.
But
All right.
I think that's a good way to end it. I think that was
Hell yeah. All right. Thank you guys so much for tuning in to another episode of Paradyme Podcast. We hope you enjoyed the show. We hope you're reading along with us. Before you take off, make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, go hit the Spotify, the Apple Podcast, wherever you listen to podcasts, we're on there, bitch.
We are.
All right. And then follow us on all our social media platforms. All the information you need will be down in the description box below. Again, and as always, who you are now is who you'll be tomorrow. Peace.
Peace.